Hello, good morning. Welcome to New Forest Morphs. Jared has joined me this morning in the facility. It's Monday morning. I hope everyone had a wonderful weekend. And it's good to have you back, Jared. We've got some interesting things happening in the facility. The first thing here is we've got an animal called Soot here, which we're not sure whether it was a hypopide or not. Jared's very kindly, Jared's very kindly, when we were cleaning today, managed to shed out, and we've got the shed of this particular boy. Now you can see with the lighting.
Better on here.
Is it better on there? Mm-hmm. Okay, let's have a look at it. Okay, so let's just show you what's going on here. So now, Jared, what is the situation as far as hypo sheds are concerned? I mean,
if it's got hypo in it, you're not going to see any of these marks.
Yeah.
On the shed.
Okay, so a hypo will give you a clean shed, even if it's got pipe and other things going on. But let's have a look at this boy. I mean, or this girl, should we say? Look how beautiful she is. And I think it must be the fire, pastel, pied all combined together.
Yeah. That's
creating such a beautiful look. So I think this one is not carrying the hypo, which is a shame. We're hoping that we could get a hypopide, but I think he might be het for hypo, Jared. But I'm not sure whether there's any markers for het hypos, and I haven't really studied it really, but
she's doing well, isn't she?
She's a beautiful animal. She's getting on for what, 500-600 grams?
Yeah.
But beautiful animal. She's lovely, isn't she? So give her another 18 months, Jared. I think she should be up for size. So thanks for sharing that, Jared. Now, talking of sheds, we've had another shed which we think is an important shed, Jared. Let's have a look at it and see. But this is what we believe to be a pre-lay shed. Now, once a girl ovulates, 2 weeks later she will shed out, and we think this is her pre-lay shed, they call it. So Jared, do you want to just have a look at her while I put this one back and see whether we can see whether that is a pre-lay shed? Right, so there we go, there's Shadow. Shall I bring her out? Might be easier if I bring her out, because she's on the hot spot. Now, what you expect, once they ovulate, they move across to the hot spot, because they are incubating the eggs in their bodies, and they will incubate them for 6 weeks themselves before they lay them. So the pre-lay shed happens 2 weeks after ovulation, so we think that's what that represents, and we believe that she would then hopefully give us a clutch. Today's the 12th of January, so we're looking at 4 weeks from now, so we're probably looking at mid-February, Jared. So it's going to be a busy month, a lot of things happening in February. So that's what we think. We think that she's had her pre-lay shed. She's now on the hot spot. Now if we take her temperature, let's just see what temps that she likes to be on. So can you see she's on 89, which is the perfect incubation temperature that we would use. So she's choosing to put those eggs on 89 degrees. So you can see that she is incubating those eggs, and then we will then take another 60 days in the incubator for her to be able to produce us a clutch. So that's all good news. So it's nice to see these pre-lay sheds starting to happen. We'll just put her back, and she feels very heavy, Jared. So next week we're going to ultrasound quite a few of our girls to see how they're doing in terms of the ultrasound. But I think the key is that when you've got girls that are nesting like this, is to be very mindful not to disturb them too much. They will start to nest. Sometimes what we do is we roll up paper and we create a nesting effect for them as well, so they'll have lots of extra substrate around them that makes them feel secure and comfortable. You'll also see that they tend to put a lot of urates around. And a good tip is not to remove the urates, is to actually leave the urates so that they feel a sense of security. They're scent marking, letting other animals know that, you know, where they are with their position, and it just creates boundaries and protection for them. So it's all part of security. And if you start removing the urates, they'll end up producing more anyway. So it's often good to leave things as undisturbed as possible. Obviously the humidity is important, because if they're in our incubator they'll have 100% humidity, so what we do is we'll lift up the humidity levels, but then, you know, within a week or two before they lay their eggs, you don't want them laying their eggs on too wet a substrate because you can damage the eggs. So it's a really fine balance between giving them enough humidity to make them feel comfortable, to help them with the incubation process, but also knowing that when they lay those eggs, you don't want to be laying those eggs in too heavy a water or too much humidity. So we like to get the eggs out dry, don't we, Jared? And then we put them into the incubation. So the next thing we need to do, Jared, is we're going to get a second incubator made up, because I think we're going to need it. We've got the other one to clean, so it's really important to clean everything thoroughly, because infections can occur and bacteria can grow, and so it's important that you disinfect everything thoroughly before you then set up your new incubator process going for the forthcoming year. So we will give that a thorough clean and make sure everything is ready to go. And it's a good policy to have your egg boxes made up a week or two before those eggs come, just in case they come a bit earlier. They'll probably come a bit later, but you'll find if on 89 degrees they'll probably be close to 4 weeks. The reason why a lot of girls go longer is because they might be sitting on 83 or 82 degrees, which is 3 or 4 degrees lower than perhaps the ideal, and it takes longer for the incubation process to occur. So bear that in mind too. If it takes longer, it could also be due to other issues. It could be that there may be some problems with the eggs development. It could be that some of the eggs are blocking the system and they can't actually release them, and that's always a possibility. So nothing to worry about. We have had girls that go more than 30 days after their pre-lay shed. They can go as many as 45 or even more. So it's important to keep an eye on them and to keep a visual on them without giving them too much disturbance. So there's a little bit thing on that pre-lay shed. The other thing is, yesterday on the video I showed Costa was breeding with Randy, and we've actually got a confirmed lock now. So let's have a little look and see whether they're still locked, Jared. I've left them obviously together. This is the... Are they still locked, Jared? Can you see you locking?
Can't really tell.
No?
They might be.
I mean, I'll bring them down if you like. Can you just bring them down? Let's see whether we can actually see what's going on here. But they were locked this morning. Whether they're still locked is another thing. There they are.
Yeah, they are.
See? So you've got there a Mocha Mojave hair ultramale girl, Costa, put to Randy, who is a pied 100% hair ultramale boy. Now we measured her last month at 10mm, and she's only, well, she was born, the date that she was born was August 21, so that makes her just over 2 years old, so 2.5 years old. Now this is one of the blessings of having an ultrasound, and we're going to come back to this later. We're going to come up with 12 ways of actually adjusting the facility to make it more efficient, particularly in this downturn where the market is actually going against breeders at the moment in some ways, but in some ways it's going for us as well, and we're going to talk about that. But we'll come back to Costa and Randy, because if it wasn't for the ultrasound we wouldn't be breeding her, but because we know she's got 10mm follicles, she's locking and she's building nicely, we've decided to actually produce a clutch from her if we can, whereas if we didn't have the ultrasound it may not have necessarily been on the radar that we were going to breed with her. So there's an example. We do have some other animals, Vesta and Ember, who were also born in the same year. One of them we just weighed is nearly 2,000 kilograms, and she may have big follicles. So
2,000 grams.
2,000 grams. Is that we're going to ultrasound them next week, Jan, aren't we? And hopefully we'll find out whether they've got follicles and whether they're worth breeding. The other thing is, with these other two, because they are het DGs, we might hold back, and we'll talk about this strategy as far as adapting to the market, is producing the right animals for the right time. And it may be that we get the Desert Ghost het clown boy or the Desert Ghost pied boy up to size first, let them build for the following year, and then put a higher end male to them rather than actually putting a lower end boy, because obviously you want to produce good offspring as part of a strategy, but we'll come back to that point later. Okay, so the other thing that we wanted to talk about was how to adapt to these current market conditions, and I think we've got 12 points that we wanted to mention. The first one is actually buying into new projects. Now we've got various friends of ours that have been very excited. They're quite new on the scene, coming into the ball python market, and they're sending me texts saying they're really excited because they're buying projects that would have cost a lot more 3 or 4 years earlier. I'll give you a classic example. Electra, which is our super gravel girl, if we just bring her out second, we paid, I think it was 3 years ago, Jad, possibly 4 years. She's 4 years old now. If you have a look at her, she's almost ready to give us an ovulation, Jared. But I think you'll find that she's 4 years old. She is a super gravel girl. And 4 years ago when I got into the hobby, I paid £1,300 for her. And now you can pick them up for, I think, £200 or £300 as hatchlings, which is a massive drop off over 4 years, Jared. And you can just see that there's projects that you want to get into that you can get into on a budget, which gives the new breeders coming up a really good opportunity to get into the hobby. So I think what we've got to do there is we've got to think very positively, and actually, rather than kind of get frustrated and annoyed that the market's dipping and diving at the moment, is actually take it as an opportunity as well. And we all need to box a little bit clever. We all need to step up our marketing. There's strategies that we can adopt that can help us get through the economic downturn, which then will be ready for when the market will pick up. We've had nearly 3 or 4 recessions since ball pythons. I think back in the 1980s and 90s, we had recessions all the way through. We had 3 recessions that we've all bounced back from. And we've seen it in the property market, we see it in all other markets. And there's no difference. The ball python market will go up and down. And a lot of the top breeders are telling us that just hold in there, not to worry or panic, but actually just carry on with your passion. Carry on making what you want to make. And then when the market does pick up, you've got the stock ready to go, and you've got the stock ready to sell in anticipation of future sales. But I still think there's quite a strong market even now, Jared, and I think if we take the right approach, we can sell snakes, the right kind of snakes, the right people at the right time is the key here. So let's just discuss one of the projects that we bought into is the clown pied project. Now, we were going to produce our own clown pied, Jared, weren't we, was the plan, which could have taken us 4 or 5 years to get to that point. But instead we managed to pick up a beautiful boy that's got leopard and banana in, and he's a clown pied. Now, a couple of years ago you would have paid £2,500 to £3,000 for that. We managed to pick this guy up for £1,000. Now he did come as a picky eater, and I think that was part of the reason why he was so heavily discounted. But we believe that if we can get him to get back on food and build him up, that we've got a wonderful opportunity to produce some multi-combo clown pieds. And that's the key, because clown pieds are going to probably crash in price in reality, because the reason being, Jared, is that most people have got lots of clowns, most people have got lots of pieds. You put them together, you're going to get a lot more clown pied production than perhaps the market can take. So the key is to actually make sure you've got some extra codoms in that clown pied project. So having leopard and banana gives us a head start on putting more codoms in. And I think people will buy multi-combo double recessives, and I think that's what they're looking for, as opposed to a standard clown pied. So the clown pieds, I believe, will crash in price. You probably end up picking them up for £500 in about a year or two's time. And I think the key to getting into the right market is to buy them with codoms and producing extra codoms in these projects before we start moving on to 3-way recessives. Let's have a look and see how he's doing. We've called him Bingo. I put him to one of our clown girls yesterday and to see whether he would lock, as a strategy for stimulating him, getting him out of himself and actually seeing whether he will start feeding. And Jared, tell us about your strategy, because you did that with one of your snakes 5 years ago and he started to eat, didn't he?
Yeah, I got Jaffa was the first snake I got, and he's a double het albino pied.
Yeah.
And he went off food for ages. It was almost about 6 months.
Right.
And he just wouldn't eat food. I thought maybe I'll pair him to a girl that I had at the time.
Yeah.
He locked, and then the next week went straight back on food.
Isn't that interesting? So a lot of people worry that when a boy goes into breeding they go off food, but they can also go on food, which I think is an interesting strategy. So it's a bit like the market. We can complain about the market, we can get out of the hobby thinking not for me anymore. But in actual fact, if you look at it sensibly, there are buying opportunities and there are refining opportunities. And I think we've got to accept that the market during COVID was a little bit artificial in some ways, where people were working from home and they wanted to get into projects, and people were paying silly money to get into the genetics. The reality is the market's settled down, and I think the more realistic prices are now coming into play. And I think, as hard as that is for a lot of breeders that have sold quite a lot of animals at high prices, I think this is a reality check, and I think it's a good reality check because it will encourage new breeders coming in who have got limited budgets as well, particularly in this economic climate. So I think the animal you referred to was Jaffa.
Mm-hmm. My first ever snake.
Your first ever snake, and I remember when you came to me, Jad, you said, "I'm not sure what's going on. This boy started eating, and then he suddenly switched off and went off for 6 months, and we were worried about him because." Being new breeders, you do worry if an animal's not feeding. You worry if they're ill. You worry if there's a problem. The reality is that he just literally switched off because a lot of boys switch off when they get to 600 or 700 grams. And I think he was 700 grams, very similar to Bingo, wasn't he?
No, it was actually he was my first snake, and he was probably about 1,000.
Was he 1,000
grams before I bought my female?
Okay.
Because I wasn't going to breed to start with.
Yeah.
And then when I decided I wanted to breed, I bought a female. And when I bought the female, that's when he stopped eating food. So I wonder if he could sense there was a female in the area, could smell the hormones or whatever. And he thought, right, I want to breed now instead of eat.
Yeah.
Went off food, and then I think I saw a tip somewhere online saying try pairing him, and did it, and a job done.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's another strategy when it comes to improving your locks, and this is all part of efficiency in this current climate, is we had 10 out of 12 locks yesterday, Jared, which was done within 24 hours, which was amazing. It's the best we've ever done. And the other 2 that didn't lock were tail to tail, or they were experiments. So Bingo, of course, he's still quite a young boy. He's 18 months. I wasn't 100% certain that he would lock because of his picky feeding and his behaviour, but I thought I'd try it. So really, one of the 2 that didn't lock was actually an experiment, and the other one was the Dinka project, which have locked before, but I was surprised they didn't lock. So we'll try again in the future, Chad, on the Dinka project. But the other animals all lock within 24 hours. Some of them lock within 20 minutes. And we know from past videos is that our boys are always wanting to come out and breed. Now, I learned something from someone else's video the other day, that one of the reasons why these boys are so highly charged and want to breed is because they're smelling each other's scenting. And what it does, it stimulates the hormones of other boys. So if you've got boys that are all reasonably close together, they give off these scenting effect that they want to breed, and it stimulates another boy to want to breed. And so when we create what they call the rhythm of the room, you're actually better off locking in a group of up to 10 if you can. If you haven't got that many animals, do 2 or 3. But you'll find that one will trigger another, and you get into this rhythm, and all the girls give off hormones as well, or pheromones, and they will then also stimulate the boys into action. So the fact that Colt, who's a brand new boy, we weren't sure whether he was going to lock. We knew he wasn't producing sperm. He's locked 3 times for us, Jared, and I'm hoping that he will produce sperm so that he's not firing blanks. Mm-hmm. But the fact that he's locking and he's eating is a really good sign. It tells me that the environment that we're setting for them is correct for breeding, and that we've got a very happy set of snakes, because happy snakes tend to breed, unhappy snakes tend not to breed. So it's kind of confirmation that we're doing something right, Jared, in terms of how we're setting out temperatures, humidity, our husbandry, our management of the facility, the feeding techniques that we're adopting. And this is something that we learn over time, don't we, Jared? We go through experiences, we make mistakes, we learn from the mistakes, and we become more refined. And as you become more refined, you're more willing to commit more money to buy the higher end snakes, knowing that you kind of know what you're doing, if you see what I'm saying. So I think there's a strategy to adopt in this current market condition, is to invest in high-end boys and girls at the right prices to further your projects. So buy into the right projects is one strategy. Another strategy is to be more selective with your breeding. Now, Jared and I had a little bit of a discussion this year, didn't we, Jared? And you were saying, Dad, let's just slow down on the breeding and let's maybe produce less animals, knowing that the market has been suppressed by the economic downturn. And I said to Jared, well, I agree with you. However, there is one particular project which Jared didn't necessarily want to do, that I'm not sure whether I convinced you or if I just did it anyway.
Just did it.
So I probably just did it anyway. I do like banana cinnamons, and I like the banana spot nose cinnamons, and this one will have the potential for pastel as well. So you could get a 4-gene animal. Now there's no recessors in that, but banana cinnies sell particularly well at the beginner's market. Now the idea here is that as we produce more animals, that we will start to then prepare ourselves to enter shows. And by entering shows, you want colourful, beautiful animals that pet owners that might be coming to the shows might be willing to spend £200 or £300 on a snake. So you want to have snakes for different levels of the market, whether it's breeders, pet market, if it helps pay for the rats and it helps pay for the facility, getting a clutch out of a female that might produce, let's say, 8 eggs for us, and they're worth £200 or £300 each, that represents £2,000 or £3,000 worth of income that will help pay for 3 months, 4 months worth of rats. So it pays for a third of your year's rat bill. So by not using her and not marketing her, you're actually paying to keep her there, but you're not generating any income. So there's a fine balance between, you've got to choose wisely what you do. You don't want to be producing stuff that's not easy to sell, but you want to produce animals that also appeal to the pet market. And things like bells, even though people criticise you for producing bells, are highly saleable at the right shows. And so taking with you some very attractive, beautiful morphs, even if you're generating £200-300 a snake, if you get 12 or 13 of those cells, it adds to the contribution of running the facility. So in my book, I think everyone to their own, but I do think there is a market for the pet market still. I believe there's also a good strong market for the right animals for the breeding market too, Jared. So there's another strategy that we adopt, is be selective with what you breed and maybe leave to one side the animals that you think would be difficult to sell, or you can sell those animals on to new breeders coming in that may want a mature female or male to breed. And we've got one, for example, we're not using, that we want to sell, which is, I think it is Perlo. He's a beautiful bell, handsome boy, ready to breed, but we're not using him. And we decided not to use him because we've got other higher end genetics in the scenario. So be selective with rebreeding. The third idea we've come up is to offer generous discounts to particularly new breeders coming in. And we've been doing it this year. So we've got, for example, some holdbacks that we have decided to sell at discounted prices to free up space for our new hatchlings coming, but also to give new breeders a chance to get into some of these projects. And what that does is it allows new breeders who might have tight budgets to get into the projects and start their process. You're creating an expanding market. And I think by having prices that are too high, you are actually not allowing certain families and individuals to get into the hobby because of their tight budget. But by being generous, I think, and actually being willing to sell some of the lower end snakes, you can actually encourage people to get into the market, which one day they could become, strong long-term breeders that will be part of the network of friendships that you're building. So I think, acorns grow into oak trees, Jared, and living in the forest, we know that you start small and you grow, and there is a learning curve for everybody. So I think it's a good strategy to encourage new breeders in by offering them perhaps extra discounts to allow them to get into the hobby to create future demand in the future. So there's another strategy. The third or fourth strategy would be to get into trading or joint projects with other breeders that you trust. I would recommend, if you do that, to have a written agreement, to have a full understanding of how you're going to split the clutch and the responsibilities of who's looking after and maintaining. You've got to be happy with the person's husbandry. You've got to be happy with the person's personality and friendship. It's very important. And I think trades and joint ventures are quite a rarity, and I would normally say to avoid them. But in certain circumstances, if you've got a really, really good friendship and you've got a good understanding, then I think that that's another clever way of advancing your projects by trading snakes or going to joint ventures, which doesn't involve us having to go into our bank accounts to generate the money to buy these. You share the clutch. So it's kind of working together as a community to help one another, particularly when cash is tight. I think that's a good strategy as long as it's done correctly. Okay, we've got 5 minutes left, so in those 5 minutes we'll just share a few more points. Talking about shows and displays and banners. So what we're finding in the US particularly is there's a lot more shows being produced to allow people to vend their snakes, which is helping the pet market come in and moving some of the lower end snakes. And I'm finding a lot of my US friends are doing a lot more work in selling their snakes. They're doing more marketing, more advertising, more getting out to the shows. And I think, as we're already ourselves, Jared, we haven't been to a show yet because of COVID. We will prepare for a future show, which means getting lovely display cases, a lovely banner, connecting with the communities, going to the local shows, getting a presence out there, being helpful to those that are coming to the show, and sharing in that spirit of vending together and enjoying one another and enjoying the company, and you're building up relationships as you go. So I think there are some advantages to doing it. There are some disadvantages that you need to consider. You've got to be careful at shows because you've got potential of disease and mites. So the biosecurity is an issue that you've got to consider, and there are issues around that to consider. So it's important to make sure that if you're going to go for the shows, that you do preparation before and after for yourself and your snakes to make sure that they travel well and that they are not subject to any bio issues that could actually affect them. So the last thing you want to do is bring back a disease from a show because someone's been handling your snake and they may have handled someone else's snake that has a mite or has an issue. So I think there are dangers with that, but I think more and more people are realizing with the right preparation you can actually safely vend at these shows, but it has to be done correctly. Other issues is breeding your own rats. Quite a few of my friends have started to breed their own rats. Now our rat bill is about £600 or £700 a month. If you can produce your own for £300 a month, that's a £300 or £400 saving, and you've got a reliable source, and you know exactly what your rats have been eating, and you know the quality of what you're putting into your animals. So all these are good, but you've got to have time and you've got to have space to do it. Jad and I have discussed it. We're not ready for that yet, but maybe in the future we might. We'll see where we go, but watch this space. At the moment we're going to carry on as we are.
You're doing it all yourself.
Jad
I ain't touching those rats.
Well, we're thinking ASFs. If we do ASFs, which are less smelly and
So you won't mind that then?
I'm thinking about it, Jared, but we'll see. But I've got to get you on board.
Nope.
Jared's not keen. Shed testing is the other thing. Shed testing is quite expensive at the moment. It's about €50 in Belgium, but we can get it in Europe. You've got to have licenses to do it as well, so there are some barriers to doing it. But Jared, what's the advantage of shed testing as far as the current climate is concerned?
I guess just it's important to know what your snakes are, so
yeah, you
don't end up breeding something that hasn't got the specific gene inside of it.
Before shed testing came out, people would hold up 8 females back thinking they're possible XYZs, and only half of them may be, producing lots of offspring that were just 33% or 50% heads. And that's a problem because then you've got a lot of snakes that you can't sell with guarantees, but now you can guarantee them. So I think that's a really good move. So going into shed testing is good.
Also, when you sell animals, you can make sure that you sell them with the right label.
Right label at the right price as well. And the other two things, very briefly, we got is ultrasound. Use of ultrasound means that you can have less males to more girls. That can save money. Also, you can not waste boys on females that aren't ready to go because you can check them. Also, you can do other things like we said to Costa. She wouldn't have been bred to, but we bred because she's got 10 mil follicles. So an ultrasound well used is a good investment. They've come down to £700 now, so it's quite good. Keep your projects going, keep your passion going. That's the most important thing because you need to be motivated to keep going. So I think breed for what you want to breed, but be selective with your breeding and have your passionate projects because that's the thing that's going to keep us going. And then a couple of small things. Shipping. People don't ship during the winter because they're worried about their snake's welfare. Ridgeways actually have heated vehicles, so we can ship all year round because we know that the heat in those vehicles and the speed of delivery is very good and efficient. So there's another good point, get the right shipper. And lastly, Jared, I think we were talking about husbandry. Good husbandry means less vet bills, it means better breeding, better production, healthier animals, and there are 12 top tips for this current condition. Thank you all for your love and support, we appreciate it. Please don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell, and we will look forward to seeing you next week. Bye bye for now.